So I think what I stress every day in the office is this is your appointment, this is your life, your body, your health. And the power lies in the patient, and it should. I think we need to go back to the 50-50 split of a patient-doctor relationship, take out all the other extraneous factors that are kind of affecting care every day. Mm-hmm. Again, I think that patient needs to approach the visit as this is my time, paying for this visit. I'm coming to you because you're the expert, but I'm relying on you to do the right thing for me. Relying on your expertise to make my health the best it can be and to take care of me the best that you can. And so I always tell my patients that it's all about them. And if they don't feel like it's all about them at their visit, then they're in the wrong setting. They're with the wrong doctor. They're with the wrong practice. They're at the wrong hospital system. It should be the focus is on the patient. Once we started calling clients, that's when the power shifted away from the focus on patient care, and this isn't a service industry. So probably about 15 years ago, once medicine became a for-profit industry, even though these hospitals keep saying they're not for-profit, these industries came in and they started grabbing up private practices, smaller hospital groups, and making them into a chain, so to speak. And admin leadership started coming in and using terms like clients. The first warning sign that medicine was turning in a direction that wasn't patient-centered anymore. And I remember sitting in a bunch of meetings with leadership, and every time they used the word client, the hair on the back of my neck would go up, and I would get really angry and say, no, these are patients. They are not clients. They are not consumers of healthcare. They need healthcare. This is not something that is elective. This is where you need to be the one on the receiving end to some degree. You're going there because I'm the expert, because I'm the patient care advocate. I'm the one with the knowledge to do the right thing for the patient. It's very depersonalized. We're not selling a commodity. We're providing a service, so to speak. But it's not really a service. It's a healthcare journey that we both share. And so, again, I felt like it took away the importance of the doctor-patient relationship, nurse-patient relationship, and it really made it sound more like we were running businesses. That's what client meant to me, is that this was a business. We're going to make money off of you. And that is not how medicine should be. Yeah. So I think, unfortunately, as I've talked about before, is patient visits are now 10 minutes. Doctors are seeing 6 patients an hour, which to me is incomprehensible. I can't get to know a patient, understand socioeconomic status, understand their prior experience with medicine in less than 10 minutes just to do that stuff, let alone get into why are they there? What do they need from me? What are they looking for? What is their concern? So in order to maximize that 10-minute visit where that doctor literally, it looks like he's on a timer, and even if you're still talking, that doctor is up and walking out of the room, you need to go prepared to your visit so that you can get your issues addressed. So a couple things to do to prepare for this visit. One is make sure you have a printed copy of your medications that is up to date and give it to the MA and say, you can rectify or reconcile my medications outside of this room. That will help cut down the amount of time she spends with you. Therefore, she's not taking time away from that doctor's visit. The second thing is know your history. And I tell patients, tell your history objectively. You all have bad experiences, unfortunately. You all have things that you want to share that may be very important to you emotionally, but the doctor doesn't have time for that. And once you start going off the path of, I had this done, and you start pulling in all the, well, when I was in the hospital, the doctor told me this, and I wasn't happy. You're losing time. You're burning your visit. And right then, the doctor's checked out, to be honest. And then the last thing is, bring someone with you who wants to hear this information as well, and bring the questions that you want answered. And maybe they all can't be answered in this one visit, but ask the 2 or 3 that are most important to you for this particular visit, because that time is short. And it's not often the doctor's fault that that visit's really short. We have productivity standards that we have to meet in order to keep our jobs, to be honest. If you aren't a very productive physician and you're not making the money that the hospital thinks you should be making for them, they'll terminate you and find another doctor who'll come in and basically be a cog in their wheel. I think it's super important for patients to go prepared to their visits and maximize that time, because it's not the doctor's fault either. So the issue is time is money, not necessarily money for the doctor, but money for the hospital system. And in turn, doctors are rewarded if they're more productive. Productive means seeing more patients. So the quicker you can tell your story and ask your questions in a very straightforward, non-emotional way, you're going to get as much information from that doctor as you can in that visit. So when my patients come to me and they can tell me their history quickly, they have someone else in the room with them that can listen or advocate or fill in the blanks, key. And the third thing is have your questions written down, because the patients who can do that for me or do that with me, they have a very productive visit. And again, I'm not the doc who runs out in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem if I only have a 15-minute follow-up slot telling the patients, hey, we got 15 minutes, so let's bang this through. Let's go through your questions. Let's make sure everything's addressed, because you and I are going to leave here knowing that we had a successful visit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, again, unfortunately, as docs, we have time constraints, especially if we work for hospital systems. And again, maybe sometimes it means our job. You're not meeting those benchmarks of productivity, then you risk losing your job at the end of the year. So part of me feels bad for the doctors that are trapped on that hamster wheel. But again, my heart goes out to the patients, because this disconnect and this time constraint is impacting healthcare. And I think if you're in a visit and your doctor, you're still talking, and your doc picks up the computer and starts backing out of the room, I would say, excuse me, I'm still talking. I have one more thing that I need to ask you, and I need you to sit down and listen to me. And I think you have that right. Say it nicely, say it politely, but I think you have that right. And depending on how that doctor responds to you, I think that tells you a lot about that doctor's character, as well as how important being a cog in the machine is. Now, if the doctor says to you, hey, listen, I'm running behind. I've been running 15 minutes, 20 minutes behind all day. That's going to keep snowballing. Why don't we set up a televisit or another visit, and I'll make sure that I give you extra time at that visit so that we can address all the questions that you need to have answered. And at that visit, bring someone with you so that we really maximize that time. And I think if I didn't hear that from a doctor personally, I probably personally would find another doc. So I tell my patients, you need to use your gut. We all have an instinct about people. We all judge people. We try not to judge people, but we all have biases and the ability to size people up or assess people pretty quickly. But the one thing I think is important across the board, one question that I think every patient can ask in every situation is, how comfortable do you feel with my treatment? Is this something that you do every day? Is this something that you've been trained in, specialize in, see a lot of? And I don't think that that's a bad question, because depending on how that doctor answers it and your gut feeling about how honest that answer is, that's going to tell you a lot right then and there. So asking a doc, how comfortable do you feel with this? Particularly if you're going to move forward with a life-altering treatment, chemotherapy, surgery, some invasive procedure. Ask that question. How comfortable do you feel? So we all have the apps now that allow patients to access their office notes and labs and various things related to the healthcare. And I encourage my patients to get on the portal, review their office note, because there are many times where the doc will write what he or she thinks they heard what you said, but it's really not accurate. And again, because of time constraints and because we're human, oftentimes the information that we're putting into the computer isn't 100% reflective of you, of what your visit was about, your history, about the physical exam they did, about the procedures they may put down that they did. And this information perpetuates. So this information just keeps going and going, because then the next doctor copies and pastes this information. And the next doctor. So when I see a patient in the office, I read out loud what the last doctor said about them. Not verbatim, but the highlights. So I say, oh, I see you have a history of this, and this is how you were treated. And I'd say half the time, the patient says, I never had any of that. But if you don't have a doc who's checking and rechecking, and you haven't done your own homework, then that information just continues and follows you. It's with you forever in your medical record. It never goes away. I think it's important, too, to look at the charges. Doctor says he spent a half an hour with you and he spent 10 minutes. I'm not saying the doctor's doing it to be a bad doctor. Maybe he's being forced to do this because the hospital system wants him to. So if the patient notices that information in their hospital record or in their office note isn't 100% accurate or reflects what they really wanted the doctor to hear, then I think the best way to go about it is, well, there's always a patient care advocate for hospital systems. And now that most medical groups are part of a hospital, you can either call the patient care advocate and start there. You can call the practice manager for the medical group and bring up your concerns. You can also, if it's really a huge mistake, then obviously there's risk management, but no doctor wants risk management alerted about an oversight or an error in a note. And then what I would tell the patient is follow through. Say, I want a copy of the revised note. I want it mailed to me, and I want to see the revision in my chart. And then I think with regard to charges, I think it goes back to the same thing. And I would first reach out to the practice manager and be honest and say, the doctor didn't say any of this to me. He didn't tell me about the risks, benefits, alternatives. He didn't talk to me about guidelines and how he's making his decision. None of that was discussed with me. My cancer diagnosis wasn't discussed with me in the detail that's documented. And if he's or she is being rewarded because they documented that they discussed this with me, then that's not ethical or moral, and it potentially is fraudulent. And again, I'm not saying that people are doing this to hurt the patient. It's just that everybody's incentivized to make more money. And as insurance companies continue to cut reimbursement over and over and over again, where we make 80 cents on the dollar with Medicare, and I think it's 20 to 25 cents for state, 25 cents on the dollar for state Medicaid, docs are being forced to upcharge, unfortunately, because we can't survive. That's where it all starts. We always say, follow the money. This is a systemic failure. Yep. And starts way outside the hospital systems with the insurance and pharmaceutical industry. And then it trickles down into how the hospitals can survive financially, and then how the docs are surviving financially. And unfortunately, the patient is the victim in all this. The most important thing that patients need to know is that the majority of doctors want to do the right thing. They love what they do. We've taken an oath to do no harm. The majority of doctors don't want to hurt you. They want to do the right thing by you. If there was one piece of information that I share with my patients, it's that the majority of doctors truly love what they're doing, truly want to do the best for their patients, want to do a great job. But often our hands are tied. Our hands are tied by a bigger entity than us, which has resulted in what I like to talk about all the time, moral injury, and the financialization of medicine. So the more medicine became a business, the more doctors struggle with knowing what the right thing to do is for our patients, but not being able to do that. I don't want people to look at their doctor as the enemy. I want this to go back to that 50-50 relationship, that patient-doctor relationship that was so sacred before medicine became a business. And I tell patients, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. When my patients point out that they have a certain medication that they're taking, and is the medication I'm prescribing going to interact or they say, oh, I forgot to tell you this happened, that may really impact which direction I'm heading with their care. So I don't get upset if a patient questions me. And I think any doctor who gets upset when they're questioned, it's not the right doctor. That's an insecure person. That's someone who has a overwhelming authority figure rather than trying to be a caregiver. And as a doctor, that approach to medicine really turns me off. And I've been a patient innumerable times, surgeries, lots of hospitalizations. So I've been on the receiving end of medical care too, more than I probably want to admit. So if you like these videos, there's more to come. Please reach out with any comments, questions. Be happy to address them in further episodes. Thanks for watching today.